Vanderbilt for the longest time had been in the cellar of the SEC, and now Clark Lee is quickly turning things around. We saw that even last year with a 5-7 season, and the top 10 players today are going to make sure that they make a bowl game this year. The passing attack is really where it all took off, and it came down to two quarterbacks taking the role. And throwing to Will Shepherd made life easy for them. The 6'3" senior is back for another year after 776 yards. He was a big reason for their success, and he's going to be a big reason for their success this year. Now we're down to one quarterback who we'll talk about in a little bit. Will Shepherd is one of those guys that he's going to lean on because they know he's a reliable pass catcher, 60 catches last year and 9 touchdowns. Vanderbilt is an interesting team just because of the struggles they've had before, and Clark Lee all of a sudden has them believing in something bigger in 2023. Now, Lee is also going to focus on the defense, and that defense did take a step forward as well. WRIGHT is one of those players that played a huge role. 7 passes defended, 3 interceptions, another senior. He's a big player at 6'4". I think that he is going to be an underrated player, maybe an all-conference player if Vanderbilt does in fact make a bowl game. This is a player who's really fun to watch. You look at the size gives him that NFL attention, but also his ability to step up last year was a big reason for their success. Vanderbilt, again, when you struggle as much as they do, even the slightest improvement can make all the changes that you need. And you're looking at a unit on the defense that was much better than it was in 2021 and before. And now in 2023, people know who they are. Their new challenge is, can they sustain that success? Now, a lot of the pressure for the offense falls on AJ SWANN. The freshman last year, now sophomore, was a big reason why this offense thrived at times. And like I said, you had to throw to Will Shepherd. That makes life pretty easy. And you want to see him complete more of his passes, 58.1% completion percentage. You look at over 1,200 yards passing, 10 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, pretty good for a freshman. I think that he is someone who can have a huge impact on Vanderbilt this year. Now, the running game, maybe not as much as a factor as you saw with Wright last year, but you're looking at someone who can have a major impact as a thrower, and you're looking at a wide receiving core that is really good as well. So his offense is figures to be in good hands. It's just a matter of what do they do to take that next step. Another player to watch, maybe on a little bit smaller side than Will Shepherd, is JAYDEN McGowan, 5'8". So you're looking at more of that slot type. How are you going to get him the ball? Possession receiver. And you look at his stats, and that's really what that indicates. 10.3 yards per catch. Like I said, more of that possession receiver. And as a freshman, that's pretty good. Now you get to take another step forward, like Swan, to be able to help this passing attack take a step forward. And I think that this could be a really dangerous team if you're not careful. And the SEC is a talented conference, but Vanderbilt proved that they can beat teams with NFL talent when they themselves don't have a ton. So this is a wide receiver group that is going to be flying under the radar and a group that you need to pay attention to in 2023. Kind of like the wide receivers, you're looking at a secondary that flies under the radar. JAYLEN Mahoney is another player, another safety that's going to make an impact. He and Wright give them two of the better safeties combo. I say the better safety combo in the conference, and they're going to be able to help this unit take a step forward. Now they need to figure out some things at linebacker, maybe some things on the defensive line with some injuries. But I really like what the secondary returns. Now, Mahoney wasn't really that productive as a safety, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything just because the safety position, if you're playing really well deep, you're not going to have a ton of stats to put in the box score, but still pretty productive. And I think that's a big reason why I'm excited about this team. I'm excited about the direction that Clark Lee has them going. And when you look at the talent returning, it's easy to see why. Yet another defensive back we'll talk about, CJ Taylor. Now, where they use him is going to be interesting. So we list him as defensive back. He can play corner, maybe throw him in the nickel spot. You can move him around quite a bit. He has decent size for a cornerback or a defensive back in general. So I really like what he brings to the table. And this is now a trio of defensive backs that are really solid for Vanderbilt. And that's going to be a big thing for them because when you play in this day and age of college football, you have to be able to defend the pass. There's too many good offenses. There's too many good passing attacks that can make you hurt. And if you have a good defensive backfield, then you're in good hands. Now, we talked about the linebackers before and how they're missing quite a bit of talent, but Kane Patterson comes back and he is going to take on a new role. You're looking at a fairly productive player for the Commodores last year, and he just takes on a leadership role because of the inexperience that's returning. So That's gonna be a big thing. This front seven is gonna have to take a step forward, and there's a lot of potential up front, but it's inexperienced potential. So it's a matter of growing up and how quickly you can do that. And Kane Patterson is gonna be one of those players that helps this group, and how well they do might depend on how well he plays and gets everybody else up to speed. One of the guys up front to keep an eye on, Christian James, 6'4", 290 pounds, and a productive player at the position. Again, the defensive tackle position we talk about a lot because you don't get a ton of the box score production that a lot of people expect from certain positions. Now, defensive tackle is going to be one of those where you either take your gap or you command double teams and whatnot, or take away an extra blocker from that offense to open things up for the guys either at defensive end, at linebacker. It's kind of a selfless position in a way. So Christian James probably isn't going to have the biggest year of anybody on this roster, but he is someone who will have a big impact. Even last year, though, 7.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. I think that he is someone that's underrated even within the Vanderbilt ranks, and someone who can have a major impact to help out this defense this year. Now, a guy who got a lot more experience in the spring was Darren Agu. You saw a couple injuries that forced him into kind of that first team reps, and he actually showed some promising potential. I think that you look at his stats from last year, nothing crazy, but that was as a freshman. I just really like his size, 6'6", 255 pounds. It's easy to see the excitement that this Vanderbilt staff has for him, and it's easy to see why they like him as a potential starter and as a future potential star. I think you're looking at a player who's going to have a breakout season, and if he continues with the spring momentum that he had, that's going to happen. Honestly, I don't see how AJ Swann doesn't have a breakout season. When you look at the guys we already mentioned, and then you throw in Quincy Skinner Jr., this is a trio of wide receivers that's going to have a fun year, and it's going to be tough to cover this whole group. Now, 17 catches, 238 yards, not exactly the most productive player, but that was also in an offense that was kind of figuring things out. This year could be even better. This year could be his most productive season. And at 6'2", brings solid size to the wide receiver room. And yet another player, especially with teams focusing on Will Sheppard and giving him a lot more attention, maybe sending help his way, that gives guys like Skinner favorable matchups. Maybe he sees more one-on-one matchups with defensive backs. And that's something that Vanderbilt hopes to exploit. This team in general is, I think, has the potential to be a bowl game. But again, you are playing in the SEC. It's not going to be easy. Clark Lee and that staff knows that, though. They're going to make sure that they bring in the talent. They're going to make sure that their talent is ready for this schedule. And it's just a matter of, do they have enough to get them over the hump? I think 6-6 is a realistic expectation for this team. It's just a matter of, are they able to do that? Are they able to come together? And the surprise factor is kind of gone, but it's still Vanderbilt. So maybe you have a little bit of that. It's gonna be a fun team to watch, and I think that you're looking at a success story in 2023.